She had done My Fair Lady, she had done, and she was on Camelot. And Walt Disney walked into her dressing room, and what happened?
Well, I thought he was coming to say he enjoyed the show or something, but he said, would I be interested in coming to Hollywood to hear the songs and see what he was doing for a new film, Mary Poppins? And I said, oh, Mr. Disney, I would love to, but I'm pregnant. I'm 3 months pregnant. And he said, that's okay, we'll wait. And so I said, well, I didn't know that preparing a film takes so long. And he turned to my then husband and said, and what do you do, young man? And I said, he said, I am a designer of theater and film and much else, books and illustrations. And he said, when you come to Hollywood, you bring your portfolio with you. And the minute he saw my husband's designs, not Blake Edwards, but the first husband, he said, you will do all the designs for the movie, the costumes, and most of the sets. And Tony Walton, my husband, he received an Oscar nomination. First, Disney had an extraordinary sense of talent, and he was very, very generous and kind. So it was wonderful, wonderful.
Mary Poppins was a very, very advanced film for its time.
For its time, yes.
It was a mix of animation and real life. And yeah, can you talk a little bit about all those
challenges? Because in those days, they didn't have all the extra bells and whistles that they have now on, for film and for animation and live action mix. So the amazing thing today is that even now, you do not see a single crack in Mary Poppins. You cannot see the flying wires, you cannot see how the tricks are done. And in those days, that was amazing, because it was the first, I think, almost the first.
And you were like flying with...
Oh, yes. The agony. I had to wear a harness through my clothes, and it was very painful. And they saved all my very difficult flying for the end of the movie, in case I had an accident, which didn't matter after that. And so one day when I was hanging way up high, waiting, I felt my wire go maybe 1 foot drop, and I got very nervous because it was the end of the film. And I said, excuse me, could you let me down very gently? I think I may be going to fall. Right, let her down very easy. Wires go up here all the way to the back to the man controlling the wires. And let her down easy, Joe, gently, gently. And I dropped like a ton of bricks. And I think I said a few words that Mr. Disney had not heard very often. But I was fine, thank God, because there was a balancing equipment as well.
Mary Poppins is still, to this day, one of your most iconic characters, and I'm wondering, how did you find her body language, her walk, her...
A little bit, two things. First of all, Tony Walton's costume designs. He said to me, I think Mary Poppins has a little secret life somewhere, and if you look inside the lining of her jackets or the petticoats of her skirts, there are many colors and quite pretty. Everything outside is very formal, but everything inside is a little bit bright and wicked. And even the daisy in her hat is just a little bit sparkling, and it gave me the idea that she did have a secret life altogether, that she had another personality which was a little more playful and fun. And the second thing is crazy, Julia. When I was doing My Fair Lady, I noticed that I turned my feet in to begin with, when I was just a Cockney girl, but for Mary Poppins, I suddenly decided to turn my feet outwards. I guess I act with my feet all the way up to my head. But that helped a lot, just to be very, very, very prim and proper.
Immediately after Mary Poppins, you were sought after by Robert Wise and also by Arthur Hiller.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about it's counterintuitive, your second film, the Americanization of Emily. It's a black and white. It's a anti-war comedy. It was a set during the Second World War, but it's kind of an anti-Vietnam film, and
Yes.
written by Paddy Chayefsky.
Written brilliantly by Paddy Chayefsky, and that was the thrill, was to be asked to make this movie. And also, I think I knew that I was going to do, or had been asked to do, The Sound of Music. And I thought that doing the Americanization of Emily in the middle would not be so typecasting, and that I could really try something different. And I was very happy with that second movie to be asked to do it. It was a wonderful screenplay, and I met my friend James Garner for the first time, and we made 3 projects together and were great friends.
And one thing that I was surprised is to hear that, because The Sound of Music is one of your most beloved films, and to hear that at the beginning you were hesitant because having seen the Broadway production,
Yes.
you thought it was too sentimental.
Little saccharine, the danger was that it could be over the top saccharine, and I mean, you have mountains and nuns and children and wonderful, wonderful things, but all together, I mean, and 7 children. So I decided it would, the director, Robert Wise, also felt the same way, that maybe we should try to be as stringent as we could with such a subject. And I think it made it still was a very sweet and loving, sentimental film, but we saved a lot of it from being too saccharine, I think.
And it wasn't Christopher Plummer an instrument of keeping it
Yes,
from being...
he was our glue that held the whole film together. Robert Wise was masterful, but Christopher was so good as the captain, and so he was so astringent. It was lovely.
Do you have favorite scenes of the film?
Scenes? Oh gosh, so many. Many memories of the cold and the mountains and waiting. So much rain. Nobody told the producers that Salzburg has Europe's 7th highest annual rainfall, and every day, rain. So we would sit and wait and be cold, and then maybe a little bit of sun, and we would rush out and get the shot. But so beautiful, the countryside was lovely. Well, I have so many memories, Julia. Can you think of one you'd like me to talk about?
Yes, I very much like the one about the shooting the opening scene.
Yes.
The last day, and
Yes.
the helicopters. I really like that one.
Okay, I think most people know this story, but I'd be happy to tell it again. The opening of the film, we shot on the very last day. Just me, everybody else had gone back to Hollywood, except for the crew. And so I began this end of the big field, and a big helicopter with the cameraman hanging out of the side, coming up over the trees and coming towards me as I begin to walk. And it was an extraordinary thing to see this helicopter so low, a little bit like a crab or a giant grasshopper coming toward me. And then all I had to do was reach my mark, turn, and begin to sing. And then I had to run back to this side, and the helicopter went back to this side. We did it maybe 6, 7, 8 times to get it exactly right, to hit the marks, to be in focus. But every time I make my turn, the helicopter, when I was finished, the helicopter would go up, and go around me, and the downdraft from the jet engine was so strong that I fell into the grass. And this happened about 3 or 4 times, and I thought, can't he see that I am eating earth and dust and hay? And, so I asked him, please, could you make a wider turn around? I didn't get anything except, great, let's do one more. So I just kept, at the end of the day, I was so happy to have a shower and to get home.
This was pretty much when you received your Oscar for Poppins.
Yes.
And there is a something that I thought it was always, from the little I know her, very telling of Julie's spirit and irreverence, and it's your thank you speech at the Oscar.
I think it was the Golden Globes.
It was the Golden Globe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that comes before the Oscar, and I had hoped, but I understood completely when I did not get asked to do My Fair Lady for the movie for Warner Brothers, and they needed a big star. I was nobody in those days, so they passed and went to my friend Audrey Hepburn, whom I was great friends with. But it's not difficult to get over the disappointment, because Mr. Disney comes along and says, would you like to do Mary Poppins? And so, yes, thank you. So when I received the Golden Globe for Mary Poppins, I got up and I said I would like to thank, first of all, somebody very important, Mr. Jack Warner, who made this award for Mary Poppins possible. So thank you so much.
I'm going to open it to the audience soon, but I wanna move on to one of the great collaborations in your career, and it's the one.
I wonder what that could be.
And it's the one with your husband Blake Edwards.
Yes.
You made 7 films together.
7 or 8? 7, I think.
7,
yeah.
And it's just and it's amazing because it feels like a creative partnership. And if you want to give us a little bit of an idea how you two are collaborating. I mean, all these films you wrote for you, the roles you wrote for you, and
yeah, it's hard to explain. It was, I think he understood me very well, and I think he saw that I wasn't just a goody two-shoes, if you know what that word is. I wasn't just all prim and proper like Mary Poppins. There may be some comedy there may be something else as well. And he saw that and developed it for when we worked together. But also, I understood him also very well over the years. We were married 41 years and we knew each other 44 years. So there was a lot of time to get to know how we worked. He was funny, irreverent, full of joy. People will tell you, people that worked with him, that people begged to be on his set, on his films, because they were always such fun.
I think, as I see it, Hollywood was going through a transition, and, the big musical were sort of fading.
Well, beginning to fade,
It was
yeah.
beginning to
By
fade.
the time I did Star, low-budget pictures like Easy Rider, those kind of movies were coming into favor. So big-budget films, people were a little bit angry and felt it was a waste. Excuse me, look at the big-budget films now. But in those days, they said, this is too much, this is too much. So all the great musicals went a little bit down, and all the independent films came up, which is fine. And now the balance is good again.
And I think Blake and your work together was very much a force of change and with the times.
Yeah, but also very innovative, because his films like 10 and Victor Victoria, for instance, were all with a fresh take, with a new idea. To write in 10 about a kind of middle-aged male crisis for guys, it was it was not the first time, but I think it was a very important film for that story. Yeah, and funny. I mean, Dudley Moore was so adorable in 10. And then SOB was an especially interesting movie because it really was Blake's, I wouldn't call it, would you call it revenge?
A little bit.
A little bit revenge for...
Okay, getting back at.
Getting back at Hollywood, because in the early days with Blake, he did not have the final cut, and quite often the heads of the studio would say, no, we take this out, we take that out, and they would take what Blake felt was the most important pieces and destroy his movies, so he wrote SOB as a gotcha, you know.
And you wrote especially your part for...
Well, I understood. He really wrote a satire on my image. Sally Miles, called Smiles, in the movie was such a good lady and known for playing Peter Pan in her youth. And so eventually her husband in the movie makes a big flop, and he decides to remake this film and make it into a pornographic movie for his wife, his star. And it's really very witty, very funny, very satirical.
Yeah. And this brings us to the movie we screened yesterday, which is one of our most beautiful, Victoria. Yeah. Is it true that you were worried at the beginning that the audience would not
yes,
you?
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah. I said to my husband, when in Victor Victoria I play a woman who plays a man who pretends to be a woman. And that is like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. I didn't know which one I was, who was I thinking? Was I today the woman or was I today the man? Let me think. So I was very worried that the audience, I said to my husband, they will never believe, I don't think, based on my image, that I could be a man. They couldn't. And he said, darling, don't worry. I make the audience in the movie believe you are a man. Therefore, the audience watching the movie will go along with that. And they did, and he was very wise that way.
How did you, but you did, I was watching the movie a couple of weeks ago to prepare for this, and you really, the body language is amazing. You change when you're her, when you're, you know,
Well, I didn't know what to do at first, and so I studied, which I was very happy about. I studied men a great deal. And what is the difference? What do they do? How do they sit? Ladies use their hands a lot, and their expressions a lot. Men sit with their legs wide, and their hands in their pockets, or mostly more still. So I thought, well, that's one thing I can do. And then I dropped my voice a lot. I mean, from being normal, I would go away, da-da, here. And then it was kind of interesting, but always walking on a tightrope for me. Yeah.
And I think one of the defining decision on the set of that film was to, instead of doing on location, to go and shoot on backstage.
Yeah,
and why was that so important, do you think?
The film was set in roughly, I think, 1934, something like that. And Blake wanted to shoot in Paris. It was all taking place in Paris. But there was no place outside that we could shoot that did not have a television aerial or some kind of modern device. And Blake said, I don't think I can find anywhere in Paris that looks as old as 1934. And he heard that Pinewood Studios had 2 giant sound stages back to back. And they opened the doors, and it was built originally for the James Bond movies. But Blake managed to get these 2 sound stages, and the entire film, all of the film, was shot inside. And it gave the film unconsciously an intimacy that I don't think we would have gotten outside. And also, our director of photography, who was a wonderful gentleman, he said, we are filming, if we need to look like we are in winter in the snow, and this can be very cold, very blue on camera. So he said, I'm going to follow the postcards of Utrillo and put warm light on the snow, like neon lights or bar signs or traffic light, whatever, onto the snow to make it look like a warmer place. And it worked. You don't see it, it's subtle, but unconsciously, I think it makes all the difference to that movie, because being intimate and warm, it just gave the film miraculously what it needed. And I think my husband knew ahead of time that's what he'd cared.
Well, one of the things, as you can see, you can hear, one of the things that's extremely fascinating in talking with Julie is her passion for cinema, but also the way it's made, not just in front of the camera. Is that something you enjoy, the process?
I took a long time to learn about it, and in my new book, which is coming out in October, and middle of October, I describe at the beginning what it is like to learn about film and how you do it and how you make the magic and how you, and then after that I don't need to explain again, but I thought it would be good to explain to the audiences that don't know what it is like to begin to make a film for the first time. And also the other thing that I write about is I was very lucky to be successful, and that success was like an assault. When it exploded, I made 3 films before even one was released, so I was having a very happy time making movies and playing and having a good time, and then suddenly all of them were released to the public, and then it was, for a while, it could, if you did not have some kind of, and I didn't really, I wasn't so rooted, but I hope I had some common sense, but it could knock you off your feet, that assault of press and adulation and all of that.
And before I open it, I promise I will, I want to talk about That's Life. The last film that Julie concludes the book, and also is the last film she did with Blake Edwards, was called That's Life. And it's
not the last time we worked, but the last film.
Last film you did, yeah. It's practically a beautiful home movie. It was self-produced. It was shot in their home. Emma is in it. Their families in it. Emma is in it. Has a big role in it. And Jack Lemmon plays a character that is very much Blake Edwards. And
Jack Lemmon was adorable. And Blake, to watch my husband telling Jack Lemmon how to be Blake Edwards was, well, you know all along. You know what you're like. How dare you be that smart? And it was a great pleasure. My daughter sitting here is my co-author on my book, but she's also a wonderful actress and writer, and he gave us both the pleasure of working together in that movie, didn't he, darling? Yeah.
Okay, now it's your turn. And there.